AI is the fastest iterating thing in the history of mankind. So in 6 months, heck, in 6 weeks, it'll be different. It'll change. And so you've got to stay on the leading edge of that as much as you can. AI is going to kind of level the playing field because it means that everybody now gets access to tool sets that make them competitive. Hi, everyone. Luke Stanton, SVP for Franchise Support Services over here at Neighborly. Super excited to be with you guys today. We've had a very long-standing relationship with the great folks at Vendasta, and they've been a part of our journey here on how we support our franchise owners and support our customers. Just quick intro on Neighborly. We're a home services franchising organization. We have 19 brands, a little over 5,000 franchise owners globally, and we fit into that space of practically anything that touches the home. And as you can imagine, lots of different entry points from a consumer standpoint, lots of different things happen around the home. So excited to share with you guys today just a little peek about our journey, what we're doing, and really just how the Vendasta product has come alongside and helped us to grow and to support our customers and our franchise owners. So lots of interesting things to share with you guys in that regard. It's interesting, just the space that we're in. And we're really here to talk about all things AI, right? And of course, because it's iterating and changing so quickly, everything around us is changing and evolving. And one of them in particular is consumer expectations. And the way that you can start meeting those expectations in a way that we previously probably could not, are through deploying the right systems and processes to get that done. So super exciting space to be in. But something that is just dramatically changing the space around us. And so to give you guys a little bit of a insight into some of our journey, if you look at all the different ways that a consumer might come in and request service and get connected without the right systems and processes, optimizing that customer journey. And so we did a pretty big analysis on our consumer journey. Where's the customer? How quickly are we to respond? How quickly we respond to leads that come in through other forms beyond the landline, what's happening in that space. And the reality is that we just kind of had some leaks, right? Like there were just spaces where the customer is leaking out. It's not because anyone is running a bad business necessarily. It's just the nature of consumer coming in, a lot of activity, a lot of things happening. How are they moving through that funnel in an organized fashion? So we're not any different than anybody else. You're not any different than anybody else. But because the technology that are at our fingertips, and Vendasta is a great leading organization in this space, you now have opportunity to connect things that scale quickly. And then what I basically say is it fixes those leaks. Any space, any opportunity for that consumer to kind of leave, you've got this infrastructure in place that helps us to better capitalize on that. So when you think about speed and response time, the consumer is looking for an answer, right? They didn't call you to get a voicemail, right? Or they didn't call you to get a call back. They called you expecting somebody's going to pick up. And even if that call is mixed, when you can start interacting through SMS, it still engages with that customer. And what I think is brilliant about the AI of things is, because we've all had some experience with basically a dumb bot, right? Whether that's SMS or online, you're interacting with something that isn't intelligent necessarily, right? It's following a list of protocol, which is a bit fixed. And again, the thing that is so tremendous about AI is that you're engaging with something that more or less is like reasoning with you as to why you should do business with them. And so it's far more dynamic, far more interactive. And while it's not intentional that you trick the customer into thinking that they're talking to a person, it does allow us to, offer much more nuanced conversation and connection. And when you do that with speed and you do that with consistency, you're putting yourself in a position that is head and shoulders above the competition around us, right? And so like those things are available to us. And again, with the AI things and the tools that are out there, they're really equalizing the playing field in some interesting ways where it's not just the large scale organizations that are going to be able to do this. These tools are also going to make the smaller contractor much more effective. So what was the old journey, right, which is the traditional journey, the conventional journey, which wasn't that long ago, call it 18 months ago, 2 years ago, it's now speeding up this new expectation for what it means to do service with someone. So for us, this is, a much more zoomed out version. But this is kind of what the plumbing starts to look like in terms of where the customer comes in, whether it's a website, once they hit the website, web form, do they call in? Where is that customer journey kind of taking them through interacting with you as an organization? And you've got to have all the right trigger points, because there's just lots of different places for the customer to eject. And when that happens, what's the follow-up sequence? What are the things that you can get connected with that draw that customer back in? And so this is really just an overview, a very zoomed out overview of how the Vendasta product basically puts you in the driver's seat of ensuring that you're connecting with that customer immediately, right? And meeting their need and preventing them from going to competition or having a poor consumer experience. So, this slide, great service doesn't scale until you add AI. I think there's a real reality to, as a human, like just deploying through labor, you do have constraints. You just do. You have constraints on, did someone not show up for work because they're sick? Did they have to leave for an appointment? And there's just, again, because of the structure, traditionally, there's just opportunities to miss the consumer. And really, me as a consumer, I'm sure you as a consumer too, you've all had this experience. If you've got a need, you're just looking for that need to get met. And some of you prefer texting, some of you prefer chat online, you prefer talking to somebody. And the AI of things and the tech stack that Vendasta has built and deployed, again, is putting organizations, contractors, companies in a position to where, again, that small contractor can scale and serve, in a competitive way to even the large scale organization. So it's pretty tremendous. And here's the easy thing is, because everyone's trying to figure out what do they do in this space. And let me just pause here for a second. If you're on this call and you don't have a Chat GPT account, I'm just picking that one. I don't really care what you pick, but if you've never, look, it's like $20 a month. I don't know what it is. It's something like that. It's really inexpensive. If you're not using the paid service just so that you can get exposed to the latest iteration, the latest development, like if you're not using those tool sets, look, you are absolutely missing out. And like here's what's happening, right? You'd say, someone might say, like, if you needed an answer, you might say, oh, I don't know, Google it, right? Like already people are saying, I don't know, ask Chat GPT. Okay, like that's a really profound mind shift in, when you say Google it, and that's very familiar, you know exactly what I'm talking about, to say, I don't know, ask Chat GPT. It is representative of how search is going to get impacted and how people are going to use the tools at their disposal to get the answers they need. The Vendasta stack is great, but you being a student of the world around you when it comes to how technology is developing and positioning as a company is just really, really critical. So some of you might be saying, I don't know, AI is a little bit of an unknown. It's talked about everywhere, but I really don't know what to do with it. The worst thing you could do is stay in a place of inaction, right? And the best thing you can do is just start failing forward, just kind of getting into it, making mistakes, and not being in a position of waiting to see what happens in the space. So really important that you take some sort of action forward to familiarize yourself with this. Now, I have said this, right? AI is going to kind of level the playing field, because it means that the individual contractor who's got one other tech or whoever it might be is now going to be competitive in a way that they previously would have to like spin and grow their way towards, right? So everybody now gets access to tool sets that make them competitive. But here's something that I think is really interesting that happens, at least until Tesla makes a really like articulated robot that can, do things in the market around us. But I think we're still fairly far away from that. And I don't even know how much of a disruptor that's going to be for, where people prefer human interaction. But I don't know, we'll see. In the immediate, this is what I think starts to happen. I think that we start to use technology, we start to use AI, we start to interact and talk with these instances to get things solved. But I think the human component as a result of this doesn't go away. And I think things change, right? Things shift. There will be new dynamics at play, no question. But I don't think that the human interaction becomes less important. I actually think it indexes the other direction, meaning now every instance where a human is at play, one-on-one, in the home, on the phone, where things escalate, the expectation for that human interaction, consumers are going to be hyper focused on authenticity, the genuine nature of that interaction. They're not going to be, they're not going to show as much grace for someone having a bad day, right? Their expectations for the human interaction are going to go through the roof. And so something to think about, because as you're deploying technology, it means that we've also got an opportunity to up our game with the people end of the functions that are still at play. One of the things that we talk a lot about today as the consumer comes through is just how do we automate that lead flow. And that's a really critical piece, because again, you have all these different places where the customer can inject from that process. And so if someone comes through, maybe they were submitting or calling or doing something that was convenient for them, and now they're waiting on a reaction back or response back. And the critical piece here is speed and consistency. And so really what that boils down to is a program. And so if you're going to reach back out to someone, what does that speed look like? What does that program look like? Obviously it's automated, but what are the right touch points? I'll give you an example. I have 3 kids. When I go home, it is insane. When I'm at work, I'm trying to focus and get things done, so I'm pretty occupied most of the day. But when I still have to schedule dental appointments and do all the kinds of things that you have to do to function in life. And I'll even give an example of one of our own franchise owners. I was having a problem with my HVAC unit, and I texted them when it was convenient for me. And then they texted me back. It wasn't necessarily convenient for me when they texted me back, but they don't know that. But what they did do was follow a program, and they just respectfully, relentlessly reached out to me and hit me 5, 6, 7 times. And I think it was like the 7th time where I was like, all right, here's a text message. Let me respond and let me get the service scheduled. And that's with my own brands as a consumer. If it's humans involved in that only, we typically stop, if we followed up at all, after 1 or 2 instances. And it's not because I'm angry at them or not interested. It's literally just because life is chaotic and we are in a distracted world, all right? And the winners in that space are the ones who can respectfully and both relentlessly go after that consumer. And so from a lead flow automation standpoint, you've got to have the right sequencing. Again, the Vendasta tech stack and the resources, the people, the culture of that company are such that we've been able to dial in a lot of the things necessary to support our customers the way that we need to uniquely support our customers. So a few things in terms of just how we approach it. Obviously we're using conversational AI, but we're really trying to apply this methodology to everything from review, reputation management, the responses within those reviews. We have franchise owners that have multiple locations, so roll-up data, and just the automated campaigns. Every instance where we can just automate a touch point and kind of take ourselves out of the equation, so we apply that speed, that consistency, and within a dynamic that is both genuine and authentic, those are the kinds of things that drive outcome. And again, Vendasta has been really strategic in that for us. So for us, what that means is we have a lot more visibility into what our funnel looks like, a lot more visibility into what the consumer journey looks like. And as a result, because we have visibility and we're shining that light right in the right direction, we're able to see all the improvements that come from it or come with it, and then continue to incrementally improve upon the spaces where, again, we just had leakage. And because the nature of the consumer, every business has that. No one's necessarily insulated against it unless you have the right stack in place to capitalize on it. Something we talk a lot about here is this idea of corporate crime. And that's where, something that's happening that we've been let happening under our watch that should not happen. Like, I'll give you an example. The phone rings, you should answer it. If the phone's ringing and you're not answering it, that's corporate crime, okay? You got to answer your phone. Those are like the fundamentals on what it means to be doing things the right way. So if you think about the consumer journey, just to throw some statistics at you guys, the and it's a pain that you're not necessarily aware of, right? But it's worth looking into is when you engage with a customer and a customer is trying to engage with you, and you're missing that opportunity to engage with them, and you're missing the opportunity in the sequence of events for outbound, it looks something like this, right? 85% of your customers are not going to call you back. So they called you, you didn't answer, they're probably not calling you back. They're probably just moving down the list. 40% of companies fail to follow up after the first initial contact. That's absolutely true. And then you think about the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. Nobody's doing that. 30% of that group go straight to your competitors, and 60% of the customers just fall out of the funnel entirely and don't say anything, don't do anything. And so this, again, is the current state, the normal space that we're in. And businesses, to some degree, are still thriving in that space. What happens when you really start to dial in, that customer journey? So for us, what that looks like is conversations, contacts, leads, and customers. And as you go through that funnel, there's always a trickle down, and everybody has a different conversion rate on leads, different conversion rate on contacts. But ultimately, what does that trickle down to into a final conversion rate? So if you look at this is what's interesting, leads that are coming through and applying the right tech stack methodology. You've already spent the money to generate that lead, right? You as a business owner, if you're in the marketplace, you've already spent the money to make the phone ring. So those are sunk costs. This is really about optimizing what you've already spent and getting the right tool set in place to do that. So it's really easy once you start to optimize that customer journey to exponentially increase the returns on that. So knowing what your conversion rate is in its current state, applying the right tech stack dramatically increases that conversion rate on leads that you've already spent money to generate, because you're fully capitalizing, fully optimizing every single customer journey that comes to that system. And what does that mean? It means that for the dollars that are spent in the marketplace to generate that lead activity, when you're not missing any leads and you've got that program in place to fully cover and dominate that customer experience, obviously your cost per lead drops. And for us, it dropped pretty dramatically, simply because we applied a better methodology for connecting with those leads. I'll give you guys a little bit of a smarter, more specific view into one of our brands, Molly Maid, who spent a lot of energy dialing in their specific customer experience with the AI receptionist, and how we handle that customer journey, how we handle, what kind of service they were looking for. And again, this really just comes down to automating as much as we can the workflows to get that customer to convert. And we had a tremendous outcome because of that. In fact, we exponentially grew the revenue related to that, just because we're going about that customer journey a lot smarter than we previously did. And then, for us, something that's just been so reciprocal in our relationship with Vendasta is that we can really lean into that relationship and their expertise. Their leaders, their executive leadership team, those are very smart people that are genuinely interested in creating enterprise value for organizations. And so they've been tremendous partners in being able to dig in and understand what else should we be doing. And here's the reality, we're all 2 years into this. We're all brand new. AI is the fastest iterating thing in the history of mankind. So in 6 months, heck, in 6 weeks, it'll be different. It'll change. And so you've got to stay on the leading edge of that as much as you can. But specifically, look at what's happening within the customer journey around you. And that's a space to pay attention to understand, is that fully optimized? Am I doing everything I should be doing in that space? Am I leveraging all the right tools?